हरिः ओम् नमः सर्वेभ्यः। अष्टाध्यायी परिचयः इत्यस्य अद्य षट्चत्वारिंशत्तमः पाठः। अस्मिन् वर्गे सुबन्तप्रक्रियायां सर्वनामस्थानविशिष्टानि कार्याणि विस्तरेण अधीमहे। शुक्लाम्बरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। येनाक्षरसमाम्नायमधिगम्य महेश्वरात् कृत्स्नं व्याकरणं प्रोक्तं तस्मै पाणिनये नमः। वाक्यकारं वररुचिं भाष्यकारं पतञ्जलिं पाणिनिं सूत्रकारं च प्रणतोऽस्मि मुनित्रयम्। अस्माकं वर्गस्य द्वे प्रयोजने अष्टाध्याय्याः आहत्य षट्शतस्य सूत्राणां व्याख्यासहितम् उदाहरणसहितं च अध्ययनं, तथा च अष्टाध्याय्याः प्रथमाध्यायस्य प्रथमपादस्य द्वितीयपादस्य च कण्ठस्थीकरणम्। सुबन्तप्रक्रियायाः अध्ययनं प्रचलत् अस्ति। तत्र प्रातिपदिकसंज्ञा सुप् प्रत्ययविधानं वर्णकार्यं त्रिपादिकार्यम् इत्यस्य सर्वस्य अध्ययनं कृतम्। ह्यस्तने पाठे नदी संज्ञा तथा घी संज्ञा एते द्वे संज्ञे अस्माभिः विस्तरेण अधीते। अद्य अग्रे सरामः। अद्यतनः विषयः अङ्गकार्यस्य एव सोपाने विशिष्टं सर्वनामस्थानसम्बन्धिकार्यम्। Before we start, I just want to clarify that today's class is extremely complex. It is definitely the most difficult class in the entire Prakaranam, the 10 classes of Subanta Prakaranam. Please pay attention. I'll be explaining mostly in English because most of the people many times have told me that new concepts are better understood when they are explained in English or Hindi rather than Sanskrit. I'll try to repeat in Sanskrit. Feel free to raise your hand and ask something if it is not clear. However, please do not ask absolutely any questions that are not directly related to the material being taught. You might feel that what you have studied today is very easy and you have understood, but believe me, after so many years of experience, the Sarvanama Sthana Karyas and the interrelationship between these sutras, like all of them are there on the previous slide. So उगितचाम सर्वनामस्थाने अधातोः अत्वसन्तस्य च धातोः नपुंसकस्य झल च सर्वनामस्थाने असंबुद्धौ. The most difficult set of sutras have been collected. There is a reason I collected all of them together, because when they are taught in different times, people just don't get a full understanding. Learning them together, at least this is an effort, one step towards uh, establishing the relationship between them in a better manner. So let us start with the concept of Sarvanamasthanam. This is something we have already studied. Kim nama Sarvanamasthanam iti chet Vishishtanam Pratyayanam Sarvanamasthanam iti samnya asti. So compare and contrast it with the Pada samnya or Bha samnya which is given to the Prakruti, whereas the Sarvanamasthana is the samnya given to the Pratyaya. What pratyaya? नपुंसकलिंग शब्दात् विहितः जस् तथा शस् प्रत्ययः अस्य यदा शी इति आदेशः भवति तदा अस्य शी आदेशस्य सर्वनामस्थानम् इति संज्ञा भवति. So फल प्लस जस इत्यत्र जस् इत्यस्य शी आदेशे कृते this she is now सर्वनामस्थान. And then we have सुडनपुंसकस्य पुल्लिंग शब्दात् स्त्रीलिंग शब्दात् विहिताः आदिस्थाः पंच प्रत्ययाः सु औ जस् अम् औट् एते पंच प्रत्ययाः सर्वनाम स्थान सम्यकाः सन्ति. सो भवत् प्लस औ इत्यत्र औ इति सर्वनाम स्थान सम्यकः प्रत्ययः. मातृ प्लस जस इत्यत्र जस इति सर्वनाम स्थान सम्यकः प्रत्ययः. यह शब्दः भिन्नेषु लिंगेषु प्रयोक्तुं शक्यः. यथा धातृ इति शब्दः अस्ति, पुल्लिंगे अपि संभवति, नपुंसकलिंगे अपि तस्य प्रयोगः अस्ति. तत्र लिंगं दृष्ट्वा सर्वनामस्थानसंज्ञायाः निर्णयः करणीयः. अतः धातृ पुल्लिंगे अस्ति चेत् सुप्रत्ययस्य सर्वनामस्थानसंज्ञा अस्ति. धातृ नपुंसकलिंगे अस्ति चेत् सुप्रत्ययस्य सर्वनामस्थानसंज्ञा नास्ति. अन्ते सर्वनामस्थानम् इति प्रत्ययस्य संज्ञा अस्ति, प्रातिपदिकस्य नास्ति इति स्मर्तव्यम्. Now, one of the most important types of pratipadikas on which the Sarvanama Sthana complexity is built up are the Ugit pratipadikas. The entire complexity of Sarvanama Sthana, which I have been mentioning again and again even before teaching the first sutra, comes because of this concept of ugit pratipadika. We have discussed that in one of the previous classes, but still let's take a quick look again. So किं नाम उगित प्रातिपदिकम्? उक् प्रत्याहारस्य वर्णः. उक् प्रत्याहार इत्युक्ते उकारः, ऋकारः, लुकारः. ह्रस्वः अपि भवेत्, दीर्घः अपि भवेत्. सामान्यरूपेण ह्रस्वः एव प्रातिपदिकेषु दृश्यते. So you have ukarah, rikarah, and then lukara. You don't see examples, so you can keep that aside. At least they are not there in our 70 pratipadika's. So ukarah, rukarah cha itsamnyakah yasmin vartate tad pratipadikam उगित प्रातिपदिकम अस्ति. तत्र कः विशेषः? प्रातिपदिके उक् प्रत्याहारस्य वर्णः विद्यते इत्यस्य अर्थः कः? साक्षात् प्रातिपदिके तादृशः वर्णः नास्ति, परन्तु धातोः नो चेत् प्रातिपदिकात् तादृशस्य इत्युक्ते उक् प्रत्याहारस्य वर्णः यत्र इत्सम्यकः अस्ति तादृशस्य प्रत्ययस्य प्रयोगं कृत्वा तस्य प्रातिपदिकस्य सिद्धिः भवति. Let me repeat. Pratipadika does not directly have an itsamnyaka ukara or rukara. Pratipadikas don't have itsamnyaka letters at all. Rama, Lakshmana, Muni, Hari, they don't have itsamnyaka letters. But if in the generation of that pratipadika, a pratyaya is used and that pratyaya has uk pratyahar letter as an itsamnyaka letter, then the pratipadika will be automatically called ugit pratipadika. So what kind of pratyayas participate in this activity? So you have ugit krut pratyaya. Shatru pratyaya has a itsamnyaka rukara. Ktavatu has an itsamnyaka ukara. Kvasu has an itsamnyaka ukara. So all pratipadikas made up from these pratyayas are inherently ugit pratipadikas. So pathat is a shatru pratyayanta pratipadika. Vidvas is also shatru pratyayanta pratipadika. Gatavat is ktavatu pratyayanta pratipadika. Sedivas is kvasu pratyayanta pratipadika. All these are ugit pratipadikas. Then there are ugit tadhita pratyayas. Matupa, vatupa, dmatupa, iyasuna. So the pratipadikas like buddhimata, yavata, gariyasa, kumudvata, which are made from such tadhita pratyayas, are also ugit pratipadikas. Then there are unadi pratyayas like dumsun or davatu. So the word pums, puman ityasya pratipadikam, pums is made up of dumsun pratyaya. Bhavat, bhavan, that pratipadika is made up of davatu pratyaya. So these are also ugit pratipadikas. यद्यपि एते अव्युत्पन्ने स्तः तथापि सुबन्त प्रक्रियायाम् एषाम् उगितत्वम् अवश्यं स्वीक्रियते. So these are the ugit pratipadikas. You have a dhatu or a pratipadika and add an ugit pratyaya to get an ugit pratipadika. This is the pratipadika which is going to be star of our discussion in the sarvanama sthana pratyaya prakriya. Now there are another type of ugit pratipadikas which start with ugit dhatu and a kvip pratyaya. So we all know kvip is a sarvapahari pratyaya. All the entire pratyaya goes away, only the dhatu remains. So if that dhatu is also ugit, then after removal of the kvipa pratyaya, the resultant pratipadika will automatically be ugita. So that is another type of ugita pratipadika where pratyaya is kvipa or kvina or vich, whatever sarvapahari pratyaya is added. And that sarvapahari pratyaya completely goes away and the ugit dhatu now gets transformed into ugit pratipadika. So there is another set where ugit dhatoho kvip pratyay krute pratipadikam siddhyati tadapi ugit pratipadikam asti. But that ugit pratipadikam, the ugit property of such a pratipadika is completely irrelevant when the subanta prakriya is to be discussed. So subanta prakriyayaha sandarbhena उगित प्रातिपदिकस्य उगितत्वस्य आधारेण विशिष्टं कार्यं कुर्मः इति यदा उच्यते तदा तत् उगित प्रातिपदिकम् उक् प्रत्याहार इत्युक्ते उगित प्रत्ययस्य प्रयोगेन निर्मितं प्रातिपदिकम् अस्ति. So it is the first category which I elaborated in details. That's the ugit word which is technically ugit from the point of view of the subanta prakriya. The second ugit type where a ugit dhatu is used to create an ugit pratipadika, that is also for all theoretical purpose it is ugit only. But for the Subanta Prakriya, it is not to be considered Ugit. Asya Pratipadikasya Sandarbhena Subanta Prakriyayam Vishesham Karyam na vidyate. Now, the way sutras actually tell us is that sutras give this particular karya, and in almost every sutra, they say this karya doesn't happen for dhatu, this karya doesn't happen for dhatu. So he says, Ugit karyam, Ugit pratipadikasya karyam bhavati, parantu dhatoho na bhavati. So the very first sutram that we are going to study, in fact, today, Ugidacham sarvanamasthane adhatoho. What is this? The very first, this is the list of the sutras that we are going to study today. So Ugidacham sarvanamasthane adhatoho. So Ugit is the point of attraction. Here some karya is being told, but adhatoho, dhatu is to be ignored. Similarly, atvasantasya cha adhatoho, dhatu is to be ignored. So there will be some or the other ways in the sutras where the Ugit Pratipadikas which are generated because of Ugit dhatus are being ignored, and Ugit Pratipadikas which are generated by attaching Ugit Pratyaya, which may be Krut Pratyaya or Tadhita Pratyaya or Unadi Pratyaya, are only the point of focus. This is the background. Now let us start the discussion. Any point in time you have a question, you can raise hands. I'll not be stopping and asking whether people have any questions today. So let's start with the karyas in the Subanta Prakriya that are specific to the Sarvanamasthana Pratyaya. So Sarvanamasthana Samyake Pratyaya Pare Ashtadhyayaam Kanichana Karyani Uktani Santi Parantu Asmakam Abhyasakrame Kevalam Karyadvayam Eva Asmabhi Adhyetavyam. Only two fundamental karyas. There itself there is so much complexity that I don't want to go in third. So only two fundamental karyas happen when there is a Sarvanamasthana Samyaka Pratyaya in front. The first karya is Numagama. Anga undergoes a Numagama. Num iti bhavati. So for example, you see examples like say Phalani. There is a Num over there. Or you say Payansi, there is a yan, num over there. Bhavan, Bhavantau, there is a num over there. Bhagavan, Bhagavantau, Shreyan, all these num is coming because of this numagama. So Sarvanamasthana Samyake Pare numagamaha bhavati. Kasya kasya numagamaha bhavati? Three types of pratipadikas. First, the Ugit pratipadikas. We discuss them in details right now. Second is Ajanta Napumsaka Pratipadikas. And third is Jhalanta Napumsaka Pratipadikas. Let's take a look at them one by one. Ugit Pratipadikas. So we saw Ugit Pratipadikas on the previous slide, many of them. So for example, Gatavat. It is a Ktavatu Pratyanta Pratipadika. So it is an Ugit Pratipadika. Ugit Pratipadikasya Sarvanamasthana Samyake Pare Numagamaha. So Gatavat plus au numagame krute gatavantau iti siddhyati. Second example, ajantam napumsakalinga vachakaha shabdaha asti. Only napumsaka and only ajanta. Ajanta napumsakaha shabdaha asti chet numagamaha bhavati. Phala iti akaranta napumsakalingaha shabdaha tatra sarvanamassthanam shi iti. Because you are talking about the napumsakalinga, the only examples will be jasa and shasa getting converted to shi. So phala plus shi ityatra phala plus e numagamaha bhavati. Phala na e, and then some other karya will happen. Phalani is the final form. Therefore, for phalam or for phale, there is no nakara, but suddenly that nakara magically comes for the bahuvachana, only for the prathama and dvitiya bahuvachana. That's the sarvanamasthana karya. Phalam, phale, phalani. That nakara is ajantasya napumsakasya numagamaha. And the third karyam is jhalantasya napumsakasya numagamaha. So jhal is varga chaturtha, tritiya, dvitiya, prathama and sa. And ha, because hal is also there. So any napumsakalinga word which ends in one of these letters. So jagat, for example, tatra api shi pratyaya pare jaganti. That numagama happens. So if you take any napumsakalinga word which has the jhal letter at the end. So for example, payas, sakara is a jhal letter, payansi. Or say rid, heart, rid. That also is the dakaranta napumsakalinga letter. It has a dakara which is a jhal letter at the end, rindi. So in this way, you can find many examples where the prathama and dvitiya bahuvachanam of the jhalanta napumsakalinga has the numagama. So the first important karya in presence of the sarvanama sthana samnyaka pratyaya is the numagama. Three types: उगित प्रातिपदिकस्य नुमागमः, अजन्त नपुंसकस्य नुमागमः, झलन्त नपुंसकस्य नुमागमः. Moving ahead, the second karya in presence of sarvanama sthana samnyaka pratyaya. As I mentioned, there are many karyas, but I am only going to teach two karyas. First was numagama, that is being taught. The second karya, this karya happens only for asambuddhi sarvanama sthana. Sambuddhi means sambodhan ekavachana. एकवचनस्य प्रत्ययः संबोधनस्य कृते प्रथमा एकवचनस्य प्रत्ययः प्रयुज्यते, सः संबुद्धि नाम्ना ज्ञायते. So that pratyaya is to be kept aside. So the second karya which I am discussing right now, that karya will not happen for the sambuddhi supratyaya. It will happen for prathama ekvachanam, prathama dvivachanam, prathama bahuvachanam. It will happen for dvitiya ekvachanam, dvitiya dvivachanam. It will also happen for sambodhana dvivachanam and sambodhana bahuvachanam. And all this is only for pullinga and strilinga. And in napumsakalinga, obviously sambuddhi is not in the picture. It is only jasa and shasa. So for napumsakalinga, it will happen for jasa and shasa. So this asambuddhi, let me repeat, sambuddhi, entire sambodhan is not being negated. Only sambodhan prathama ekvachan is being negated. Sambodhan prathama dvivachan and sambodhan prathama bahuvachan, the forms are anyway identical to prathama dvivachan and prathama bahuvachan. That is not being negated. So what is this karya? The karya is nakaropadhasya dirghaha. A specific type of nakara undergoes a dirghadesha or causes a dirghadesha for a swara before that. So again, there are three different cases where that nakaropada undergoes a dirgha. Here is what the complexity starts, and the complexity is going to increase because the numagama and nakaropada se dirgha are going to interact in a very beautiful manner in some of the upcoming slides. So first, ns, half n followed by half s. If you see such a construct, very weird construct, ns, if you see this construct, then the swara before that nakara undergoes a dirgha. So payansa, you have a na plus sa. How is payansa generated? We are going to see in a minute. But payansa, there is a na plus sa. Now, because this is an apumsakalinga word, we have the shi pratyaya, which is e, and then the upadha, that is the previous letter of this nakara, undergoes a dirgha. So nis ityasya asambuddhau upadha dirgha. Upadha means penultimate, means previous letter. So nakarasya upadha ityukte nakarat purvam vidyamanaha वर्णः इत्युक्ते यकारोत्तरः अकारः तस्य दीर्घे कृते payansi. So payah, payasi, payansi. And obviously that nakara plus sakara will undergo nashtapadantasya jhali and an anuswara will be created. That's the separate step. So that's na plus sa. Second example, specific to this word called mahanta. So if you take the word mahata, mahata word undergoes a numagama and you get mahanta. Once you get mahanta, this particular nakaropadasya dirgha kicks in and you get mahanta plus au. This is a pullinga word, so I am using prathama dvivachanam. Mahanta plus au. The nakarat purvam vidyamanaha akaraha tasya dirghaha bhavati mahantau. And the third example, any nakaranta anga tasya api upada dirgha bhavati. So if you have rajan, tatra nakaraha ante asti. What is happening in the previous two cases? In previous two cases, nakara is not at the end. There is a sanyoga at the end. In the first case, there is a na plus sa sanyoga, and there is a, in the second case, there is a na plus ta sanyoga. In the third case, if the nakara is at the end, then that nakara will also result in making the previous swara dirgha. So nakarantasya angasya asambuddha upadha dirgha. So rajan plus au rajanau. That dirgha happens over here. In this way, the karyas that we are going to study in the course are Sarvanama Sthana Samyake Pare Numagamaha. Three karyas divided across two sutras. First sutra is purely for the Ugit Pratipadikas, and the second sutra is for the Ajanta and Jhalanta together. So that is first section. The second section is Nakaropadasya Dirghaha. That is also combined into two karyas. Two sutras. The first sutra is for these Sanyoga related cases, Na plus Sa and Na plus Ta. In the second, it is specifically the Mahanta word. And the second sutra is in general for the Nakaranta cases. This way, you have two sutras here, two sutras there, and then there are some Niyama sutras associated with this Nakarantasya Asambuddha Upada Dirgha. So, a total two more sutras are added over there. Once these two topics are discussed, towards the end of today's class, I am going to discuss yet another topic, which is Supratyaye Pare Upadha Dirgha. Su is the Prathama Ekavachanam. Supratyaye Pare Upadha Dirgha. Specifically, Karya is done for the Supratyaya, not in general for the Sarvanamasthana, but for Supratyaya, Karya is done and Upadha Dirgha happens. So that is going to be talked as the third part of today's class. So the class will be long. I don't know, 1.5 hours, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, I don't know. But I want to teach everything in sequence in today's class one by one. If your patience or time is done, you might quit and then listen offline. But I want to teach these three topics in details today. First is the sutras for the Numagama. Second, sutras for the Nakaropadasya Dirgha. And third, sutra specifically causing the Dirgha in presence of the Supratyaya. Because there are some words where only Supratyaya प्रक्रिया हैज अ दीर्घ से भगवान भगवंतौ भगवंतः और से भवान भवन्तौ भवन्तः चंद्रमाः चंद्रमसौ चंद्रमसः. So the only su pratyaya has a dirgha. So that particular discussion will be done in the third section of the class. There is I think one question over here, but I'm going to keep that aside. Do not jump ahead. Do not think of prakriyas that I have not taught. Only focus on the things that I'm telling you right now. And if still you have questions, then you can ask. सर्वनामस्थान विशिष्टानि इतोपि कानिचन कार्याणि सन्ति. That's always there. अस्माकम् अध्ययनार्थं तानि न आवश्यकानि. I am repeating this again and again. Do not think of prakriyas that are not taught. The complexity will exponentially increase. And if you keep on thinking, okay, then what will happen for this word? Then what will happen for that word? You will be thoroughly confused. Purely pay attention to what I am teaching and listen to this class twice, thrice, 4 times. This is the most difficult class in the entire Suvanta Prakaranam. Let's start with the first of the three topics. Sarvanama sthane pare numagamaha. Sarvanama sthane pare ugit pratipadikasya numagamaha bhavati. So here is the chart. First case is the ugit pratipadikasya numagamaha. So sarvanama sthane pare ugit pratipadikasya numagamaha bhavati. The sutram is ugidacham sarvanama sthane adhatoho. Ugit pratipadikas are of two types. I'm just revising again and again so that it fits in the brain. Ugit pratipadikas are of two types. Dhatu or pratipadikam plus ugit pratyayah. एतादृशानाम उगित प्रत्ययानाम सर्वनाम स्थाने परे नुमागमः भवति. सो गतवत इज अ क्तवतु प्रत्ययान्त प्रातिपदिक. गतवत प्लस औ सर्वनाम स्थानम अस्ति. नुमागमे कृते गतवन्तौ. एवमेव पठत इति शत्रु प्रत्ययान्त प्रातिपदिकम पठन्तौ शक्तिमन्तौ भवन्तौ. So now if you take the example of this gatavata and if you read the table, gatavan, gatavantau, gatavantaha, gatavantam, gatavantau, gatavataha. The shas is completely different because it is not a sarvanama sthana, so numagama does not happen. In all the first 5 cases, the numagama happens because of ugidacham sarvanamasthane adhatoho. In the same way, pathan pathantau pathantaha, pathantam pathantau pathataha. Shaktiman shaktimantau shaktimantaha, shaktimantam shaktimantau shaktimataha. Bhavan bhavantau bhavantaha, bhavantam bhavantau bhavataha. In all these cases, first 5 entries, there is a numagama because of ugidacham sarvanamasthane adhatoho. So that is the case of dhatu or pratipadikam plus ugit pratyaya. The second case, as I mentioned, is ugit dhatuhu plus kvip pratyaya. That is completely irrelevant. Etadishanam ugit pratipadikaanam asya sutrasya prayogaha na bhavati. Etad jnapaitum eva sutre adhatoho iti nirdishtam asti. So this is not for ugit dhatu. This is for ugit pratyaya generated pratipadikam. So gupu iti ugit dhatu asti. तत्र क्विप प्रत्यय कृते गुप्प इति प्रातिपदिकम सिद्ध्यति. Now this प्रातिपदिकम is also ugit प्रातिपदिकम, but it is the second type of ugit प्रातिपदिकम. अत्र गुप प्लस औ नुकोपि नुमागमः न भवति. It's a simple gupau रूपम. So gup gupau gupaha. Very simple form happens over here. So this is ugidacham sarvanamasthane adhatoho. The sutram is over here. Let us not spend time on padacheda, anuvritti, adhikara and so on. Let us simply talk about the artha. उगित धातु भिन्नस्य उगित प्रातिपदिकस्य सर्वनाम स्थाने परे नुमागमः भवति. So bhavat is an ugit pratipadika. Remember, ugit pratipadicas are of multiple types. Bhavat is the unadi pratyayanta ugit pratipadika. The ugit pratyay can be of multiple types. So bhavat is made from the ugit unadi pratyaya, ugit unadi pratyaya. So bhavat प्लस औ तत्र नुमागमे कृते भवन्तौ इति सिद्ध्यति. एवमेव बुद्धि प्लस मतुप बुद्धिमत बुद्धिमन्तौ इति सिद्ध्यति. तत्रापि नुमागमः भवति. Now this sutram has two components. I am specifically focusing on ugit and I am focusing on sarvanamasthani. There are two components. Adhatoho, that also I have explained. Adhatoho iti kimartham? गुपु प्लस क्विप गुप इत्यादीनाम उगित धातोः सिद्धानाम उगित प्रातिपदिकानाम विषये अयं नुमागमः न इष्यते, अयं नुमागमः न भवति. Now that is only 50% of the reason why adhatoho is present. There is yet another reason, but I am not going to teach that. So adhatoho ityasya itopi kinchana prayojanam asti. Some shastra vishay is there. Asmakam pathyakrame napekshitam. So that is ugit, sarvanamasthane and adhatoho. There is another word that I have conveniently ignored. Acham iti asti. Ugid acham sarvanamasthane adhatoho. Why is this word acham present over there? Again, it is not in the syllabus, but I'll explain it in 30 seconds. Acha is a specifically, so ancha is a dhatu. So anchu is actually an ugita dhatu. The pratipadika generated from this ugita dhatu will get the numagama. So adhatoho is a blanket nishedha. But for one particular dhatu, we still want numagama. So that dhatu is explicitly added in the sutram. So ugit pratipadikas, which are made up of ugit pratyaya, they will always have the numagama. If ugit pratipadikas are made up of ugit dhatu, then they will not have numagama. Exception is the anchu dhatu. So anchu plus quin, there is a quin pratyaya that gets added. The pratyaya is completely removed. You get a pratipadikam called ancha. For that there will still be numagama. Now this ancha pratipadika is not in our list of 70 pratipadikas, so you don't have to worry. Acham iti amshasya prayojanam asmakam pathyakrame nasti, parantu atra maya spashtikrutam asti. I have also explained this vaguely in 30 seconds. If you want, you can read that or you can ignore that. The takeaway message from ugidacham sarvanamasthane adhatoho is that there is a numagama when there is a sarvanamasthana samnyaga pratyaya in front of ugit pratipadika. And then this is a list of the ugit pratipadikas that you should definitely remember. So prasiddhani ugit pratipadikani adhadattani santi etesham sarvesham api angasya sarvanamasthane pare ityukte pullinga strilinge panchasu pratyeshu pareshu napumsakalinge dvayoho pratyayoho parayoho ugidacham sarvanamasthane adhato ityanena numagamaha bhavati. So shatru pratyantani gachan gachanto gachanta pathan pathanto janan jananto shunvan shunvanto bhavan bhavanto Bhavan bhavantau, and vidwan vidvamsau. That's also numagama over there. There are some pratipadikas for which there is a nishedha, specifically in case of Shatru, like dadat becomes dadat, dadatau, dadata, and so on. But again, these are additional sutras not in the list of 70. Ktavatu pratyanta pratipadikas, that is also ugit. Gatavan gatavantau, patitavan patitavantau, jnatavan jnatavantau, shutavan shutavantau. क्वसु प्रत्ययंत सेदिवान सेदिवांसौ सेदिवांसः पपिवान पपिवांसौ जक्षिवान शुश्रुवान. Matup pratyanta pratipadika. So these are the tadhitantas. The previous three were the krudantas. Now this is the tadhitanta. Buddhiman buddhimantau buddhimantaha buddhimantam buddhimantau buddhimataha. So there is no numagama for shasa. Shaktiman shaktimantu. Vidyavan vidyavantu. Gunavan gunavantau. So in some cases for su pratyay you will see an a, for other cases you will not see an a, but that's not the difference I am focusing. I am focusing the difference of nakara. So buddhiman, buddhimantu, in both cases there is a nakara, that's what you have to look at. Vatu pratyanta pratipadikas. We have studied this while studying bahu gana vatu dati sankhya. So these are all sankhya samnyaka words. Yavan, tavan, etavan, kiyan, iyan. And then we have Iyasun pratyanta word Shreyan Shreyansau Shreyansa, Preyan Preyansau, Gariyan Gariyansau, Laghiyan Laghiyansau, and so on. And then you also have Bhavan Bhavantau Bhavantaha, Mahan Mahantau Mahantaha, Bruhan Bruhantau Bruhantaha, Pushan Prushan Prushantau, and Puman Pumamsau Pumamsaha. So everywhere you hear a nakara, anyani api kanichana pratipadikani avashya santi. So that is about the sarvanam ugdacham sarvanama sthane dhatoho, and it takes care of this first category, ugit pratipadikasya sarvanama sthane pare numagamaha bhavati. One small note before we go ahead. All these pratipadikas that I have mentioned over here appear in Pullinga as well as Napumsakalinga. So they are Bhashita Pumskas. So let's see how the Napumsakalinga forms run. You have Gachat, Gacchati, Gacchanti, Janat, Janati, Jananti. And you have Gatavat, Gatavati, Gatavanti, Yavat, Yavati, Yavanti, Shreyah, Shreyasi, Shreyansi. So the Napumsakalinga forms also for jas and shasa, there will be the numagama available over there. Some exceptions, some apavadas are there, you can keep that aside. What happens in Strilinga? Ugit pratipadikani pullinge napumsakalinge prayujyante, Strilinge tebhyah neep pratyay krute dirgha ikaranta shabdah siddhyati. So bhavata plus neep becomes bhavati. Similarly, buddhimati, shreyasi, and so on. अस्य ईकारांत शब्दस्य संदर्भेण अग्रे नुमागमः न भवति. So ugidacham sarvanama sthane adhatoho is not applicable in the feminine form because it eventually has gotten a nip pratyaya, and that's a completely different word. It is not considered an ugit word for that particular prakriya because an additional nip pratyaya is added. So for bhavati it is bhavati, bhavatyau, bhavatyah, and so on. So in such a case, you do not get, in general, you do not get an umagama in the sarvanama sthana case by ugidacham sarvanama sthane adhatoho. Ugidacham sarvanama sthane adhatoho is only for pullinga and strilinga. Do not think in about special cases like dada, dadha, jakshat, and so on, and what happens. Sometimes there is a numagama in strilinga, pratipadika construction, and so on. Do not think anything about that. All that is out of scope, and all that is a little higher level. For now, just focus on what is there on the slide. Whatever you need for the 70 words in the course is being taught in details. That completes the first topic, Ugit Pratipadikasya Numagamaha. The second topic is Ajanta Napumsakasya and Jhalanta Napumsakasya Numagamaha. That's a single sutram, very simple to understand. Napumsakasya Jhalachaha. Jhalachaha ityukte jhal plus achaha. Jhalantasya ajantasya च नपुंसकस्य सर्वनामस्थाने परे इत्युक्ते शी प्रत्यये परे नुमागमः भवति. So jhalantam napumsakam. Jagat is the takaranta napumsaka. Takara is a jhal letter. So jagat plus jasa or shasa, jagat plus she, jagat plus e, jagat ityatra numagamaha, midachontyatparaha. So the numagama goes and sits after the last swara, which is after that gakara. So jaga num ta, jaga na ta i, jaganti, anuswara parasavarana jaganti. So First na becomes anuswara, it again becomes the same parasavarna nakara. So in the same way, payas, payas plus jasa or shasa, payas, payas plus she, copy paste, it should be payas plus she, payas plus e, payanum sa e, payansi, and further dirgha happens. Now you know why dirgha happens, right? There is a nsa. So look at the second column on the slide. Nsa ityasya asambuddha upadha dirgha. So now you have payansa by sarvanama sthane by santa mahata sanyogasya. We are going to talk about that sutra. There will be an upadha dirgha over there. So payansi. So see two sutras interacting together. Another example, Sajush. This is there in 68 number in our Abhyasa Pustakam. Sajush plus Jasa plus Shasa. Sajush plus Shi. Sajusha plus E. Shakar is again in the Jhal Pratyahara. Numagamaha bhavati. Saju num sh E. Sajunshi. Nashabadanta se jhaliti anusware. Sajunshi. So just like Jaganti, this form is created. This is all about the Jhalanta Napumsakalingas. For the Ajanta Napumsakalingas, the example is a phala plus jasa or shasa, phala plus she, phala plus e, phala plus num plus e. Because this is the Ajanta Napumsakalinga, the numagama will happen at the end of the word because that is the last swara, and after that, so phala plus num plus e, phalana e, and now this is a nakaranta anga. So go back to our initial discussion. Nakarantasya asambaddha upadha dirghaha. So phalan plus e, phalani. So that's where akara happens. See the complexity. You are actually going to see the interaction between the two sides of that particular diagram, and yet another sutram is going to play a bigger role at some place in next few slides. So phalani. Now the point to understand is that झलन्तस्य तु बहूनि उदाहरणानि सन्ति. तकारस्य अस्ति, सकारस्य अस्ति, दकारस्य अस्ति, शकारस्य अस्ति, पकारस्य अस्ति, बहूनि उदाहरणानि सन्ति. परन्तु अजन्ते केवलम् अकारस्य एव उदाहरणम् अस्ति. इदं सूत्रम् अजन्त नपुंसकलिङ्गेषु केवलम् अकारान्त शब्दानां प्रक्रियासु एव प्रवर्तते. इगन्त नपुंसकलिङ्ग शब्दानां प्रक्रियासु Numagama avashyam bhavati. For example, if you have vari or if you have say madhu, there will be numagama. But there is a completely different sutram called ikochi vibhakto. That sutram says that there will be numagama for all the ajadi vibhaktis, nothing to do with sarvanamasthana. So if you see the vari word, vari, varni, varini, vari, varni, varini, varina, varine, varinaha, varinaha, varino, varinoho, varini. So in front of all ajadi pratyayas, whenever there is a pratyaya that starts with a swara, you will get a numagama. That sutra we are going to learn much later. So that's the sutram called ikochi vibhakto. I think is there all the way in class number, God knows, 49 maybe. Here, ikochi vibhakto. So we are going to learn that sutra much later. For now, just understand iganta napumsakalinga shabdana. Iganta napumsakalinga shabdanam prakriyasु यद्यपि नुमागमः श्रूयते तथापि सः अनेन सूत्रेण न भवति. नपुंसकस्य झलचः, the acha part is only for the hraswa akaranta napumsakalinga words. Again there is a question, why Jayanti, why what Jaganti, maybe why Jaganti does not get an upadha dirgha. I have not taught upadha dirgha, so don't think about it. And if you want to go back to the other slide, there is no sutram for the upadha dirgha. Jaganti does not end with sa. Jaganti is not nakaranta and Jaganti is not mahant. So there will be no upadha dirgha. So as I mentioned, do not think of prakriya that I have not taught. Only focus on the things that are present on the slide. That is the reason why Abhyasa Pustakam is given, that after today's class, when everything has to come together, that's the place where you will write the prakriyas. For now, only focus on things that are given on the slide. So napumsakasya jhalachah, jhalantasya ajantasya cha klibasya ityukte napumsakasya numagamah syat sarvanama sthane pare. What is the sutrartha? Jhalantasya ajantasya napumsaka shabdasya sarvanama sthana samnyake pratyeye pare ityukte she pratyeye pare. Because it is a clearly napumsaka. So sarvanama sthana means she. So she pratyeye pare numagamah bhavati. Payas plus jasa, paya plus num plus e. Phala, that's the ajanta. Phala plus jasa, phala plus num plus e. So that's the napumsakasya jhalachaha. That takes care of the entire first block. Ugit pratipadikasya numagamaha, ajanta napumsakasya numagamaha, jhalanta napumsakasya numagamaha. Here is the summary slide. Sarvanama sthane pare numagamasya sankshepaha. First, same thing that's there in the box, I am repeating so that it fits in the brain. So प्रातिपदिकम उगित अस्ति चेत उगिदचाम सर्वनाम स्थाने धातोः इति नुमागमः. You will forget sutras faster than you think. Personal experience of many people whom I have taught. So that's why on a separate document today I have actually written down these sutras. Ugidacham sarvanama sthanya dhatoho, that's the numagama. The second sutram is napumsakasya jhalachaha, for the napumsakalinga pratipadikam, which is either jhalantam or ajantam. And I have also told you where to use this sutram. So this sutram will be used in the prakriya of number 13, number 14, number 16 and 31 in the Abhyasa Pustakam. For ajanta, phala and sarva. For jhalanta, so many examples. Jagat, so jagat jagati jaganti, rudra dirundi, tattetani, etadetetani, saju sajushi sajunshi, payah payasi payansi, dhanu dhanushi dhanunshi. So there will always be a numagama in the prathama and dvitiya bahuvachanam. All the words that are written over here are not in the today's homework for Abhyasa Pustakam. Only some words are there because some words will have some additional prakriya which is not yet taught. So I am just telling you for which words eventually when you will do the homework, you will have to use the Ugidacham Sarvanama Sthanya Dhato Sutram and Napumsakasya Jalacha Sutram. The homework for today will be given towards the end of the class. That's the first of the three sections of today's class. The first section was about the numagama, that is now complete. We are now going to start with the second section, which is asambuddhi sarvanama sthana samyake pratyaya pare nakaropadhasya dirghaha. And then there will be third section, supratyaya pare angasya dirghaha. So let's start with the second section. असंबुद्धौ सर्वनामस्थाने परे नकारस्य उपधायाः दीर्घः. Two important points you have to understand. This is asambuddhi sarvanamasthana, which means the su of sambodhana ekvachan is excluded. Su of prathama ekvachanam is still there. So su au jas out, and for sambodhana su will not be there, only au and jas. For the previous ones, like the Napumsakasya Jhalacha and so on, all were there. So I did not even mention about the Supratyaya of Sambodhana. So for the Napumsakasya Jhalachaha and for Ugidacham Sarvanamasthane Adhatoho, it was Prathama, Dvitiya, and the Prathama Pratyaya were repeated for Sambodhana. But here it is not like that. Here it is slightly different. Sambuddhi is not to be considered, and the upadha of nakara. So you first have to see a nakara, and whatever is the swara before that, you will have to do the upadha dirgha. So that's the essence that you have to remember over here. Now, as I mentioned, just like the previous case, the numagama, there are three sub rules over here. Nisa ityasya asambaddha upadha dirgha. Mahanta, specific word, Mahanta ityasya asambandho padadiyega. These two are collected in a single sutram, Santa Mahata Sanyogasya. That is hopefully the first sutram that we are going to talk. Santa Mahata Sanyogasya. The fundamental clause in Santa Mahanta Sanyogasya is that asambuddhau sarvanamasthane pare numagame krute. So you first do the numagama. It is not written in the sutram. The sutra does not expect you to do the numagama. But all the prakriyas where the Santa Mahata Sanyogasya will is used, eventually in some or the other way there will be a numagama done. Why I am saying that? Because if you look at this particular chart, you will see that the Santa Mahata Sanyogasya, basically the first two bullets, is for na plus sa and it is for na plus ta. So where is that na coming? It is not there in the original in Pratipadika. The na is coming because of numagama. So Santa Mahata Sanyogasya, this sutram always follows after the numagama. And what do I mean by numagama? We just now studied two sutras of numagama. उगिदचां सर्वनामस्थाने धातोः इत्यनेन नुमागमः भवति, नो चेत् नपुंसकस्य झलचः इत्यनेन नुमागमः भवति. So basically, the Santamahata Sanyogasya Sutram will be used after you do the Numagama either by Ugidacham Sarvanamasthanya Dhatoho or by Napumsakasya Jhalachaha. Let us see examples. So, Asambuddhau Sarvanamasthane Pare Numagame Krute always Dirgha Astiti na Dviprakaraka Shabdanam Upadha Dirgha Bhavati. So Numagama happens in multiple cases. For example, Jagat, Jagati, Jaganti. There is also Numagama. But there is no Upadha Dirgha. Somebody was asking the question. Why? Because Upadha Dirgha clauses are not satisfied. Upadha Dirgha happens in only two types of words. In both these cases, there will be Numagama first and then there will be Upadha Dirgha. What two type of words? Let us go one by one. Let us go slowly. सकारान्तस्य अंगस्य यदा नुमागमः भवति तदा नुमागमे कृते न प्लस स इति जायते तत्र नकारात् पूर्वं विद्यमानस्य स्वरस्य दीर्घः भवति. So random numagama is not going to cause a dirgha. Sakarantasya angasya numagama will cause a dirgha before nakara. So payasa sakarantam angam asti. Tasya upadhayam numagame krute. Numagama will happen after the last swara. So tatra upadhayam eva numagama bhavati. So paya plus na plus sa. You have a configuration of payansa. Numagama has happened. Now nakarasya upadhavaranaha ityukte yakarottaraha akaraha tasya dirghaha bhavati payansi, and then nishchapadantasya jhali will create an anuswara. Another example, dhanus. Again, sakarantam angam. Jas pratyay pare napumsakasya jhalachaha iti numagamaha. Both of these are sakaranta napumsakalingangas. So napumsakasya jhalachaha is going to do the numagama. Dhanunsi, dhanunshi. Upadha dirgha bhavati. Dhanunshi. So dhanunsi. Let's go to the dhatu part, shabda patha. Typing mistake, a crucial typing mistake here. As I mentioned, usually these are considered shakaranta. See, dhanunshi, you see the dirgha over there, dhanunshi. Where is this dirgha happening? Santa mahata sanyogasya iti dirghaha. Santa sanyogasya yaha nakaraha. तस्य उपधावर्णस्य असंबुद्धौ सर्वनामस्थाने परे शांतमहत संयोगस्य इति दीर्घः. So let me just fix this. You have dhanunsi and then you have dha noon si, and then you have the noon si, and then you have the noon shi. So dhanunsi, that nu is going to become dirgha. Dhanunsi, same sutram over here. Nakara sakara sanyoge, santa mahanta sanyoge se dirgha. There are some arrows and so on missing. I'll fix it after the class. Another example, shreyas, sakarantam pratipadikam asti. Shreyas plus au. Now here it is not napumsakalinga. So nashchapadant, so napumsakasya jhalachaha will not cause the numagama. The ugidacham sarvanamasthanya dhato will cause the numagama. Why? Because the sakara shreyas is yasun pratyanta word. It is ugit word. It will be there in the list of ugit words that we discussed earlier. So ugidacham sarvanamasthanya dhato iti numagama. But whatever, we care about numagama. So once the numagama happens, na sa au shreya shreyansau shreyansau, that akara again dirgha is because of santa mahata sanyogasya. So in this way, if there is a sakaranta anga and if you do the numagama, if you means what? You will do the numagama either by nashchapadantasya jhali or by ugidacham sarvanamasthanya dhatoho, then there will be upadha dirgha. I am not saying that sakarantasya angasya nityam upadha numagamaha bhavati. There are cases in the sakaranta angas where you will not see the numagama at all. Why? सकारान्तस्य अङ्गस्य नुमागमः केवलं नपुंसकस्य झलचः. I think I'm using this name Nishrapadantajali by slip of tongue. But Sakarantasya Angasya Numagamaha, it can happen by Napumsakasya Jhalachaha or it can happen by Ugidacham Sarvanamasthani Adhatuho. But if a word like say Chandramas or a word like say Vedhasa, it is not a Napumsaka word, so Napumsakasya Jhalachaha is not applicable, and it is not Ugit word. Chandramas is not Ugit, Vedhas is not Ugit. So then Ugidacham will also not cause the Numagama. So for the words like Chandramasa, there is no Numagama at all. And if there is no Numagama, you cannot get a Nakara Sakara Sanyoga. And therefore, this current Sutram Santa Mahata Sanyogasya can also be not applied. And therefore, the forms are Chandramaha, Chandramasau, Chandramasaha. There is no Dirgha happening over there. Why? Because there is no Na plus Sa. Na itself is not coming, therefore Na plus Sa is not coming. So not every Sakaranta Anga will undergo Anumagama, but whichever Sakaranta Anga undergoes Anumagama, it will generate a Na plus Sa configuration. In the Na plus Sa configuration, Nakarat Purvam Vidyamanasya Swarasya Dirgha Bhavati. So the Na plus Sa configuration of Payansa will become Payansi. For Dhanunsa will become Dhanunsi, Ukarasya Dirgha. For Shreyansa will become Shreyansau. So that is one aspect of Santa Mahata Sayoga. Only half of the sutra is being discussed. Santa. And now the second part of the sutram is specifically about the Mahat word. Mahat iti shabdasya numagame krute nakarat purvam vidyamanasya swarasya dirghaha bhavati. So Mahat is an Ugita pratipadika. So Mahat plus au tatra ugidacham sarvanamasthane adhatoh iti numagame krute mahantau. So you have a na generated and mahat shabdasya numagame krute. Again the previous sutram ugidacham sarvanamasthane adhato is used for numagama. Tatra na plus ta iti jate nakarat purvam vidyamanasya ityukte hakarottaraस्य akarasya dirgha bhavati mahantau. So in this way, Mahat iti shabdasya api numagame krute upadha dirgha bhavati. Sakaranta angasya api numagame krute dirgha bhavati. In both cases, there is a sanyoga at the end. In one case, there is a nasa sanyoga. In other case, there is a natta sanyoga. Nasa is a general sanyoga. Natta is only for the Mahatta word. In these two cases, there is a upadha dirgha by the sutram Santa Mahata Sanyogasya. So that's the sutram Santa Mahata Sanyogasya, Santa Sanyogasya, and Mahataha cha yaha nakaraha. So the Santa Sayoga, na plus sa, and Mahat will have got a nakara because of numagama. Tasya upadhayaha dirgha syat asambuddhau sarvanama sthane pare. So सूत्रार्थ संबुद्धि भिन्ने सर्वनाम स्थान सम्यके परे नकार सकार संयोगस्य तथा च महत् शब्दस्य नकारस्य इत्युक्ते तत्र नकारत् तकारः अस्ति तस्य उपधायाः दीर्घः भवति. Payas plus jasa. I have given an example where the numagama happens by napumsakasya jhalachaha and then there is dirgha. Another example, mahat plus that is for the mahat word, and the numagama happens by ugidacham sarvanamasthaniya dhatu. So I have clubbed two things, santa and mahat, and numagama happening by napumsakasya jhalacha and by ugidacham sarvanamasthaniya dhatu. So ugidacham sarvanamasthaniya dhatu iti numagame krute mahantam iti bhavati. असंबुद्धौ इति किमर्थम? महत् इति शब्दात् संबोधनस्य सुप्रत्यय कृते महंत नुमागम will anyway happen because ugidacham sarvanamasthane adhatoho, that clause has not negated, that clause, that sutram does not have a negation clause for sambuddhi. So tatra numagama avashyameva pravartate महंत इति भवति, परंतु अग्रे उपधा दीर्घः न भवति यतो हि शांत महत संयोगस्य इति सूत्रम केवलम असंबुद्धि सर्वनामे स्थाने एव प्रवर्तते. So you have महंत संयोगान्तस्य लोपः. We have studied this in the Tripadi class. We'll get rid of takara, will finally generate the form called mahan. अत्र यद्यपि प्रक्रियायाः त इति अङ्गस्य अन्ते प्रक्रियायां न प्लस् त इति अङ्गस्य अन्ते विद्यते, तथापि अत्र उपधादीर्घः न भवति। अनेन प्रकारेण अत्र सान्तमहतसंयोगस्य, विच इज बेसिकली द फर्स्ट एंड द सेकंड बुलेट इन द राइट साइड बॉक्स, स इत्यस्य असंबुद्ध उपधादीर्घः एंड त इत्यस्य असंबुद्ध उपधादीर्घः. The third one is a little bit convoluted in the sense there are 4 sutras that we have to study. I think 3 sutras we have to study. Nakarantasya angasya asambuddha upadhadirghaha. So let's go to that. Oh, before that, just one. Again, I'm just repeating things again and again. So for Santa Mahata Sanyogasya, idam sutram prayena numagamad anantaram eva pravartate. I have explained this again and again. I'm still telling it so that you have a proper idea in the brain. So तथा च अनेन नुमागमस्य उपधास्वरस्य दीर्घः भवति. So that न is being added before the s, or that न is being added before the t in the mahat word, the swara before that n is going to get a dirgha. So that was about the Santa Mahata Sanyogasya. And now we will go to the second one. असंबुद्धौ सर्वनामस्थाने परे नकारान्तस्य अंगस्य अपि उपधा दीर्घः भवति. So असंबुद्धौ सर्वनामस्थाने परे नकारान्तस्य अंगस्य उपधा दीर्घः भवति. Now this nakaranta anga is of 3 types for this particular discussion. First, just carrying the idea from the previous sutram, you can have a numagama generating a nakaranta anga. So nakarantam angam trividham. प्रक्रियायाः अंगस्य अन्ते नकारः नुम् इति आगमरूपेण विधीयते, tat angam atra nakarantam angam asti. Now how will you get a nakara at the end of the anga? By the napumsakasya jhalachah sutram, ajanta anga, when it gets a numagama, it will be at the end. Because otherwise jhalantanga, the numagama will be before the last letter. But for the ajantanga, for the word phala, the numagama will be at the end. So nakarantam angam trividham asti, tatra prathamaha bhedaha नुमागमेन जायमानं नकारान्तं अंगम. सो मूलरूपेण फल इति अकारान्तः शब्दः, परन्तु तत्र शी प्रत्यये परे नपुंसकस्य झलचः इति नुमागमे कृते फलन. Now you have a nakarantam angam. E is the pratyaya, phalana is the nakarantam angam. Tasya upadha dirghah bhavati. So phalana tatra upadha dirghe krute phalani iti bhavati. So atra prakriyayam numagama rupena jayamanaha yaha nakaraha saha ante bhavet. We are talking about nakarantam angam. So the nakara must be at the end. For the previous 2 cases, nakar was not at the end. Nakar was inside a sanyoga na plus sa or na plus ta. Now the nakar is at the end. This kind of anga which has a nakara at the end is of 3 types. First, the nakara is not in the pratipadika, but it is generated because of numagama. That will happen only with napumsakasya jhalachaha. If you apply napumsakasya jhalachaha on the phala plus shi, you will get phala na plus e. Now you have a nakarantam angam and you get upadha dirgha on that anga by sarvanamasthane cha asambuddhau. The second type of nakaranta anga is an actual nakaranta pratipadika. Yatra pratipadikasya ante anna iti asti. Remember, while studying the nakaranta pratipadikas, we classified them as annanta, sanyoga purvam annanta, innanta, and so on. That classification is going to come to our rescue over here. So the second category, yatra pratipadikasya ante anna iti asti. Now you don't need a numagama. There is direct anna present at the pratipadika. But still there is, this is a nakarantanga. So sarvanamasthane pare asambuddhau sarvanamasthane pare numagamaha bhavati. So rajan plus su pratyaya prathama ekvachanam, rajan plus su, this is an asambuddhi sarvanamasthana, prathama ekvachanam, asambuddhi sarvanamasthana, tatra upadha dirghe krute rajan, and further prakriya happens and you get raja. And that is why in the Sambodhana Ekvachan, it is not Raja, it is He Rajan. So Rajan tatra akarasya dirghaha na bhavati, He Rajan ityeva bhavati, and Nakara Lopa also does not happen. We have seen the sutra na ni sambuddhyoho, ni pratyepare संबुद्धि सम्यके प्रत्यये परे न लोपः प्रातिपदिकान्त्यस्य इति नकारलोपः न प्रवर्तते. So we have seen that sutram, go back and revise. But for now, understand, यत्र प्रातिपदिकस्य अन्ते अन् इति अस्ति, तत्र मूलरूपेणैव नकारः प्रातिपदिके अस्ति. So you don't need to worry about the नुमागम at all. तत्र नकारात् पूर्वं विद्यमानस्य अङ्गस्वरस्य उपधा दीर्घः भवति. राजन् becomes राजान्. Hey Raja, sorry, Raja. Similarly for other four also, Raja, Rajanau, Rajanaha, Rajanam, Rajanu. Everywhere you see an A, that is the nakarantasya angasya upadha dirgha. Atman, Atma, Atmano, Atmanaha, Atmanam, Atmano. Here that dirgha, that's because of Sarvanamasthane cha sambuddhau. Napumsakalinga, Naman, Nama, Namni, Namani. Why is that dirgha? Because you have Shi Pratyaya, which is Sarvanamasthana, Nakarantasya angasya, Asambuddhi Sarvanamasthane pare. Now, in case of Napumsaka, it is only Shi Pratyaya, which is always Asambuddhi. Because Sambuddhi is only the Ekvachana Samnya. We are talking about the Prathama and Dvitiya Bahuvachanam. So Naman plus Jasa. Ityatra Jas Pratyasya Shi Adeshe Krute. Naman plus E. You have an Asambuddhi Sarvanamasthana. You have a Nakaranta Anga. Dirghe Krute. Namani. This is the second category. The third category, Yatra Pratipadikasya ante in asti. So mantrin, dandin, shashin, and so on. In iti asti. So that is the third category. Let me repeat. First category, yatra nakaraha agama rupena vidhiyate. Second category, yatra pratipadikasya ante an asti. And the third category, yatra pratipadikasya ante in asti. Like shashin or like dandin, etadrishasya शब्दस्य एतादृशस्य प्रातिपदिकस्य कृते इदम सूत्रम न प्रवर्तते. You do not get 648 सर्वनामस्थाने च असंबुद्धौ, but you get two niyama sutras that have been created on 648. So if you go to 648, you have sarvanamasthane cha asambuddhau. This particular sutram, sarvanamasthane cha asambuddhau, has two niyama sutras. They are given a little bit later. Inhan pushar yamnam shau and saucha. These are the two niyama sutras. What is a niyama? Siddhe sati arambhaha niyamarthaha. So some rule that is already being told is being retold in a restricted manner. That is a niyama. So inhan pusharyamnam shau, you can see this sutram starts with inna. So that's the innanta words that I am talking about. So all the nakaranta words, the upadha dirgha has been told in general by 648. But for the innanta words specifically, like shashin, dandin, mantrin, and so on, there is a specific overriding done by inhan pusharyamnam shau and saucha. So that's what we are saying on this slide, that nakarantamangam trividham asti, tatra dviprakarakasya nakarantasya angasya krute sarvanamasthane acha asambuddha iti avashyam pravartate, parantu tritiyam yad nakarantam angam, yatra nakarat purvam ikaraha asti, innantam yad angam, तस्य कृते इदम सूत्रम न प्रवर्तते अपितु तत्र प्रकृत सूत्रस्य द्वे नियमे प्रवर्ततः. So two niyama sutras. First is in han pushar yamanam shau. We are only going to talk about the in part. We are not going to talk about the han part, pushan part, and aryaman part. There are actually four words in which represents the innanta words like shashin and so on. Hanna, which represents Hannanta words like Vrutrahan and so on. Pushan, which is a Nakaranta word which means Surya. And Aryaman, which is another Nakaranta word. So this particular sutram, this particular niyama is for four types of words. Innanta words, Hannanta words, Pushan iti shabdaha, Aryaman iti shabdaha. But I want to be very clear, we are not studying everything. We are only going to study for the given 70 words. Han, Pushan and Aryaman are not in the syllabus. I will not talk about them. We are only going to focus on in. Some of you might ask why I am omitting these things like this. There is a reason. I have seen people struggling even while studying these fundamental sutras. So, in my opinion, studying some basic part of the sutram and mastering it thoroughly is extremely important before you start getting answers to everything. Unless you learn addition and subtraction, you cannot go with the fractions and trigonometry and others. So let's go step by step. When I'm telling you that in is the only thing you need to focus, believe me, and only focus on in and don't talk about anything else. So inhan pusharyamणाम शौ इत्यत्र इन्नन्त शब्दानां विषये नियमः कृतः अस्ति. कहा नियमः? इन्नन्त शब्दानां केवलं शी प्रत्यये परे एव उपधा दीर्घः भवति. So many sarvanama sthanas are there, but for innanta words sarvanama sthane च असंबुद्धौ इत्यनेन सर्वेषु सर्वनाम स्थानेषु उपधा दीर्घे प्राप्ते अयम उपधा दीर्घः नियम्यते इन्नन्त शब्दानां केवलं शी प्रत्यये परे एव उपधा दीर्घः भवति. So shashin plus au, it is not a she pratyaya, so you do not get an upadha dirgha. Compare and contrast it with rajan. Rajan plus au is rajanau. Atman plus au is atmanau. But shashin plus au is not shashinau. It is shashinau. Upadha dirgha na bhavati. But if you take a word like dandin plus napumsa, which is napumsakalinga word, then there will be a she pratyaya and then there will be upadha dirgha. So dandi, dandini, dandini. That's the dirgha that is happening for the napumsakalinga she pratyaya. So inhan pushamaryamanam shau simply says that for the innanta words, only the napumsakas will have upadha dirgha. Because she means what? She means the napumsaka sarvanamasthana. So pullinga, strilinga will not have upadha dirgha. Only napumsakalas will have upadha dirgha. A better or a simpler or shorter way of saying that is inhan pusharyamnam shau. She pratyay pare eva upadha dirgha bhavati. And if somebody says what happens with shashin plus jasa or shashin plus shasa, atra shi adeshaha eva na bhavati. This is a pullinga word. For a pullinga word, you do not get a shi adesha. So shashin plus jasa, shasa ityatra shi adeshaha na bhavati. Atah atra upadha dirgha pi na bhavati. Inhan pusharyamnam shi pratyeye pare sarvanama sthana samya asti chedeva upadha dirgha. Not every random shi pratyaya. Sorry, not every random jas or shas pratyay. Jas or shas pratyay se shi adeshe krute tasya sarvanama sthana samnya bhavati tataha atra upadha dirgha bhavati. But for pullinga and strilinga you will never get the conversion to shi. So atra shi adesha eva na bhavati upadha dirgha pi na sambhavati shashinaha iti eva rupam bhavati. So that is first niyama 6-4-12 inhan pusharyamnam shau. And the next niyama is saucha. Su pratyaye ityukte prathama ekvachanasya, not sambodhan. Only prathama ekvachanasya su pratyay pare api upadha dirgha bhavati. So two concepts have been separated. First he says only she pratyay pare upadha dirgha bhavati. So that is jasa and shasa. And then he says su pratyay pare api upadha dirgha bhavati. And asambuddhav is already there. We are talking about the niyamanam of asambuddhav. So su ityukte prathama ekvachanasya su pratyaya nahi sambodhanasya su pratyaya. So su pratyay pare ityukte prathama ekvachanasya su pratyay pare api upadha dirgha bhavati. That is the reason why you have shashin plus su, shashin plus su upadha dirgha shashi iti antimam rupam bhavati. So shashi shashinau shashinaha shashinam shashinau shashina. Why do you get that dirgha ikara in prathama ekvachanam? It is because of the sutram sauch. So su pratyay pare api atra sarvanama sthana samnya asti sambuddhi pratyah nasti chet upadha dirgha bhavati. And therefore in the napumsakalinga you have he shashin, there is no upadha dirgha. And then same reverse question. If I take the su pratyaya for the napumsakalinga word, dandin plus su ityatra su pratyaya sarvanama sthana samyakaha eva nasti. Typing mistake, I should say sarvanama sthana samyakaha. So dandin ityatra su pratyaya sarvanama sthana samyakaha eva nasti. Ataha tatra upadha dirgha api na bhavati. So the conditions have to all come together. It should be sarvanama sthana first of all. It should be asambuddhi. And then for inhan pusharyamnam show, there must be she pratyay, which is jasa and shasa. And for saucha, there must be su pratyay, which can be sarvanama sthana only in pullinga and strilinga. So this way, for the innanta words, the summary is that only for the supratyaya in pullinga and strilinga there will be upadha dirgha, shashi, shashinau, shashinaha. And for napumsakalinga, in the jas and shas, that is the shi pratyaya, there will be upadha dirgha, dandi, dandini, dandini. That's the upadha dirgha that is happening. That's for innanta. And for other two cases, that is annanta or cases where nakara has come as an numagama, all cases you will see the numagama. So for example, phalam phale phalani, you see the numagama over there. And for rajan, you see the upadha dirgha over there, phalani. And for rajan, you will see the upadha dirgha everywhere. Raja, rajano, rajana, rajanam, rajano. There will be upadha dirgha in all the 5 cases. So let's look at the sutram. Sarvanama sthane asambuddho followed by its 2 niyamas. So that's what I am written over here. Sarvanama sthane asambuddho. That's the upadha dirgha for the annantamangam. It can be a direct annanta like rajan, or it can be a generated annanta like phalan. And then you have 2 niyamas. Inhan pusharyamnam shau. That is for the innantanga in the napumsaka case. Saucha, that is also innantanga in the pullinga or strilinga case. So सर्वनाम स्थाने च असंबुद्धौ नकारान्तस्य अंगस्य उपधायाः दीर्घा स्यात् संबुद्धौ असर्वनाम स्थाने परे. So संबुद्धि भिन्ने सर्वनाम स्थान सम्यके प्रत्यये परे नकारान्तस्य अंगस्य उपधाया दीर्घा भवति. राजानौ और नामानि are the examples. The niyama 1, inhan pusharyamnam shau, inhan pushan aryaman. Out of that, han, pushan, aryaman are out of scope. So innantasya angasya antima nakarasya upadhayaha kevalam shi pratyaya pare eva dirgha bhavati. So atra shi iti the napumsakalinge eva prayujyate. So dandin plus au dandinau atra shi pratyaya nasti upadha dirgha na bhavati. Dandin plus shi ityatra avashyam upadha dirgha bhavati. This is a niyama sutra. That's why I have written over here shi pratyaya pare eva upadha dirgha bhavati anyatra na bhavati. And obviously saucha, what was the han, pushan, aryaman ete shabdaha abhyaskrame na santi. So we'll ignore that. And then saucha, so same words, innanta shabdanam antima nakarasya upadhayaha sarvanama sthana samyake supratyaya dirgha bhavati. So shashi or pullinga dandi word. Dandin is in the napumsakalinga as well as pullinga. So pullinga dandi word will have dandi, kavir dandi, kavir dandi. But in the napumsakalinga, there will be no dandi, upadha dirgha, just dandi, danda, dandaha, yasya asti saha, tat, dandi, iti napumsakalinge raswantam eva rupam siddhyati. So that completes the second side of the section number 2, the second side of this diagram. So tatra asmakam upadha dirghasya sangshepaha. The first thing we talked is that sakarantasya angasya numagame krute nis iti jate santamhanta sanyogasya iti nakarasya upadha dirgha. You will use that for payas or dhanus, dhanunshi or payansi. That's where you will use this particular sutram. Mahat shabdasya prakriyayam numagame krute tatah santamhata sanyogasya upadha dirgha. Word number 13 in our abhyasa pustakam is mahat. Then for the nakaranta annantasya angasya upadha dirgha. So rajan, raja, rajana, rajana, atma, atmana, atmanaha, phalam, phale, phalani, sarvam, sarve, sarvani. So in these cases, namani, karmani. So that's the upadha dirgha. And innantasya angasya shi pratyaya pare upadha dirgha will be used in the prakriya of dandin, and innantasya angasya nakarasya su pratyaya pare upadha dirgha will be used in the prakriya of shashin. So this is going to be very useful, more useful than you think. These are going to be the prakriyas where you will use santamhata sanyogasya or sarvanama sthane asambuddhav on inhan pusharyamnamshau or saucha. That completes the section number 2 of our class. Now we come to the last and the most important section, section number 3. Asambuddhau supratyaya pare upadha dirgha. So there is an upadha dirgha which happens in case of some words. Like for example, chandramas. You get chandramaha only in the prathama ekvachanam. Otherwise, you don't say chandramaha, chandramasau, chandramasa, chandramasam, chandramasau. So you don't get upadha dirgha anywhere else. Similarly, bhavat word, bhavan, bhavantau, bhavantaha, bhavantam, bhavantau, and so on. Shreyas word, Shreyan, Shreyan, Shreyas probably Shreyans, Shreyas probably not, but still that sutra gets is automatically applicable for Shreyas because of Parjanyavat Sutra Pravuttihi. But for now, you can focus on Chandramas and you can focus on Bhavat. So, asambuddhau supratyay pare upadha dirgha. Basically, now we are not talking about sarvanama sthana because sarvanama sthana will be all of the pratyaya, su, aujas, and so on. We're not talking about that. We are talking about only the supratyaya, but asambuddhi remains. So, in the sarvanama sthana case in the previous section, there was asambuddhi concept that continues, and then you have supratyaya pare, only specific to supratyaya, we have upadha dirgha. So, asambuddhau supratyay pare upadha dirgha. There is only one sutra, atvasantasya cha dhatoho, but it has two components. So, we will have two slides. Again, for understanding it is very simple. The complexity comes when the sutras interact together. And this is the most complex. You are going to see a weird interaction of the sutras. Pay attention. So, first, yesham pullinga. Why I am saying pullinga, I don't know. Yesham pratipadikānām ante. I don't know why I wrote pullinga. Let's quickly check. Atu pratyayanta shabda se there is no pullinga mention. I don't know. I must be half asleep when I wrote this. Get rid of the pullinga. There is no pullinga over here. Yesham pratipadikānām ante atu pratyayah asti. So atu is one of those pratyayas which generates the ugit pratipadika. So if you want to go to one of the very old slides, let's go to this one of the previous slides and remember that ugit pratipadikas. What is that list of ugit pratipadikas? See, ugit pratipadicas of many types. Shaktru, ktavatu, kvasu, matup, vatup, iyasun, unadi pratyas and so on. Out of that, see which ugit pratipadicas are atu ending. So let's enumerate. Shatru is atru ending. So it is not atu. Ktavatu is atu ending. Kvasu is asu ending. So not relevant. Matupa Pakara is it samyaka, so it goes away. A tu ending, you still consider this as a tu ending because there is an a tu component present over there. In other cases, there is no atu component. In Shatru, there is no ukara, there is rukara. In Ktavatu, it is atu ending. In Kvasu, there is sakara, not takara. Matup and Vatup are interesting candidates. In Iyasun, again, there is no takara. In Unadi Pratyayas, we'll probably not have an atu over there. There are some other pratyayas over there, dumsun and bhater, davatu and so on, but there is no specific, I think, atu which is being considered over here. So yesham pullinga pratipadikānām ante atu iti pratyasti. I think bhavat will be there because bhavat has bhater davatu. So there is an atu pratyay over there. Bhater davatu. So there is an atu pratyay over there. So we will probably take bhavat. And similarly, you have to decide it on a case by case basis. So yesham pratipadikānām ante atu iti asti. So yesham pratipadikānām ante atu iti asti. So you might not hear it in the pratipadika, but it should be there in the derivation of that pratipadika. So atu iti asti tesham angasya upadhayaha supratyay pare dirghaha bhavati. So supratyay pare tesham angasya upadhayaha dirghaha bhavati. So atu pratyaya, as I mentioned, ktavatu, matup, vatup. This is not an exhaustive list. You have to actually look, and whichever is the atu pratyanta word, you have to take it. But etadrishanam pratipadikānām supratyay pare upadha dirghaha bhavati. Upadha dirghe krute anantaram ugitacham sarvanamasthane adhatoho iti numagamaha bhavati. All these are ugit pratipadicas. So ugidacham sarvanamasthani adhato. Remember the very first sutram. In the last 10 minutes of the class, I am referring to what is taught in the first 10 minutes of the class. So ugidacham sarvanamasthani adhato. एतत् सूत्रम उगित प्रातिपदिकानां विषये प्रवर्तते. These are ugit pratipadicas. Atuk, tavatu, matup, vatup, and so on, bhavat, and so on are ugit pratipadicas. So atu pratyant pratipadikaनां विषये su pratyये परे upadha dirghah bhavati. Upadha dirgha we studied earlier. It was only for n plus sa, n plus ta, and n. So such an upadha dirgha is not possible for ktavatu pratyanta words like gatavat, matu pratyanta words like buddhimat, vatu pratyanta words like say vidyavat, and so on. So we have a separate sutram. That sutram says su pratyay pare upadha dirgha bhavati. So etesham pratipadikaanam su pratyay pare adau atvasantasya cha dhatu. That's the sutram we are going to learn right now. Atvasantasya cha dhato iti sutrena upadha dirgha bhavati. तदनंतरम नुमागमः भवति. So example of ktavatu pratyanta gatavat plus su, only su pratyaya. Gatavat plus sa. First there will be upadha dirgha. I am specifically telling this because sutra numbering is flipped. The numagama sutra is para sutra. The upadha dirgha sutra is purva sutra. So one might say first let's do the numagama by paratva. But commentaries are very clear over here. एतेषां सर्वेषां शब्दानां विषये अत्वसन्तस्य च धातोः इति सूत्रेण उपधादीर्घे कृते तदनन्तरं नुमागमः करणीयः. So you have the upadhadirgha gatavat and then you do a numagama gatavan iti rupam bhavati. And this is only for the su pratyaya. So for au, jas and so on there will be only the numagama. That's why the forms are gatavan, gatavantau, gatavantaha. There is no dirgha over there. So ktavatu pratyanta shabdanam vishaye gatavan iti supratyay pareva dirgha bhavati. And for shatru pratyanta words, they are not atu at all. And therefore, even for prathama ekvachanam, there is no dirgha. Gachan, gachantau, gachanta. Now you see why it is gachan, gachantau, gachantaha versus it is gatavan, gatavantau, gatavantaha. In case of gachan, numagama happens by ugidacham sarvanamasthani adhatuho, but the dirgha cannot happen because of there is no atu pratyay present over there. However, for the gatavat word, the numagama happens by ugidacham sarvanamasthani adhatuho, but the dirgha also happens before that because it is atu pratyayanta word. So atu pratyayanta shabdasya krute adau dirghah tadanantaram numagamaha bhavati. Similarly for buddhimat, it is atu pratyayanta word. Dirghe krute upadha dirgha numagamaha bhavati. Vatu pratyayanta word yavan dirghe krute numagamaha bhavati. Anena prakarena atu iti pratyayanta shabdanam vishaye su pratyay pare adau upadha dirghah तदनंतरम नुमागमः प्रवर्तते. So that is one part of atvasantasya cha dhatoh. The second part of atvasantasya cha dhatoh says that yesham pratipadikam, again this pullinga is nonsense. Yesham pratipadikaanam ante as iti asti. So the pratipadika must end in as, like chandramasa or like shreyasa. येषां प्रातिपदिकानाम् अन्ते अस इति अस्ति तेषाम् अपि अङ्गस्य उपधायाः सुप्रत्यये परे अत्वसन्तस्य च धातोः इति सूत्रेण एव दीर्घादेशः भवति. So the दीर्घादेश happens on the in presence of the supratyaya for two types of angas. Atu pratyayant anga. It can be any atu pratyaya like tavatu, matup, vatup, davatu and so on, any atu pratyaya, or it can be asa, the literal configuration called asa. Asa is not a pratyaya. Literal configuration called asa should be there. And what kind of this asa configuration? Where is this asa configuration available? Etani asanta pratipatikani dviprakarakani. There can be a pratyaya like vasu, kvasu. So if you go to that previous slide, almost everything that is eliminated from atu will be in the asu. So kwasu or say iyasun will be as pratyayant or asu pratyayant. So here क्वसु क्वसु यसून प्रत्ययान्त प्रातिपदिकानि एतेषाम अन्ते अस इति विद्यते. So these are the asant pratipadicas. For these atvasantasya cha dhatoho will cause the upadha dirgha, and because these are ugit pratipadikas, there will also be numagama by sarvana ugitacham sarvanama sthane dhatoho. So for example, vidvas विद्वस वसु प्रत्यांतम अस्ति विद्वस. So you have vidvas plus su. First there will be upadha dirgha vidwas, and then there will be numagama vidwans. Further prakriya happens and you will get vidwan. In the same way, shreyas, shreyas, asu pratyanta. This is yasun pratyanta word. So you will have shreyas and then numagama shreyan. Further prakriya will happen and shreyan iti bhavati. So let's repeat. When you have a su pratyaya, two types of entities, pratipadikas, will get a numagama. Will get an upadha dirgha. Two types of entities will get an upadha dirgha. First is the atu pratyant entities. Multiple possible atu pratyas are there. All are included. Bhagavat becomes Bhagavan. Upadha dirgha by atvasantasya cha dhatoho followed by numagama by ugitacham sarvanamasthane dhatoho. Then the second part is as yesham ante asti tadrishani pratipadikani. अस येषाम अन्ते अस्ति तादृशानि प्रातिपदिकानि अपि द्विप्रकारकाणि. First, the asa pratyayantani. So asa is a pratyaya, like vasu is asa, kwasu is asa, iyasun is asa. So asa pratyayanta pratipadikani. Why we are separating them out and why we are explicitly speaking about them? Because as soon as you say they are vasu, kwasu, iyasun, so ugit pratyayah asti iti yada uchyate, तदा अत्वसंतस्य चा धातो इत्यस्माद् अनन्तरं पुनः नुमागमः भवति. So same prakriya like bhagavat, or in case of bhagavat or bhavat, there is numagama, there is upadha dirgha and there is numagama. Same way in case of pratyaya words like vidvas, tasthivas or shreyas, they are asu pratyanta pratipadikas. So there will be atvasantasya cha dhatoho iti upadha dirgha and there will be numagama. And then there is a second type of asanta pratipadikas which are not ugit pratipadikas. So the example is chandramasa. It is not vasu, kwasu, iyasun. There is some unadi pratyaya called asi, but it is not ugit pratipadika. Asi is not ugit. Therefore, etesham pratipadikanam vishaye kevalam upadha dirgha bhavati tadanantaram numagamaha na pravartate. Because it is not an ugita pratipadika, there is no need of, it's not possible to have a numagama. So chandramas ityatra kevalam atvasantasya shadhato iti upadha dirgha eva bhavati. Tadanantaram agre prakriyam krutva chandramaha iti siddhyati. There is no numagama. So compare and contrast it with vidwan. There is atvasantasya cha dhatoho followed by ugidacham sarvanamasthanya dhatoho. In case of chandramas, there is only atvasantasya cha dhatoho. Why? Because chandramas is not ugit pratyanta at all. But vidvas, tasthivas and so on are all ugit. Therefore, su pratye pare kasya kasya upadha dirgha bhavati. So a total of three possibilities. First, atu pratyanta words like bhagavat, like say gatavat. For them, there will be atvasantasya cha dhatoho causing a dirgha, followed by ugidacham sarvanamasthane dhatoho causing a numagama, giving gatavan. Second, asu pratyanta pratipadikas or asu pratyanta pratipadikas which are also ugit. For them also, atvasantasya cha dhatoho will give an upadha dirgha, followed by ugidacham sarvanamasthane dhatoho will give a numagama. Example is vidwan, tasthivan, shreyan. And finally, non-asu pratyanta sakaranta words like chandramasa or like vedhas. For them, Atvasantasya cha dhatu will still act because it is asanta. Asa is there at the end, literal asa. So yesham pratipadikana ante asa iti asti. So chandramas or vedhas has asa at the end. So tatra atvasantasya cha dhatu ityanena avashyameva upadha dirgha bhavati. Parantu agre numagamasa sutram nasti. Atah ugidacham sarvanamasthanya dhatu ityanena numagamaha na pravartate. So that's atvasantasya cha dhatu ho atu pratyanta shabdanam असंत शब्दानां च उपधावर्णस्य असंबुद्धिवाचके सुप्रत्यय परे दीर्घः भवति. And if there is a numagama, it will be by ugidacham sarvanamasthanya dhatu. That numagama should be done after dirgha. So dirgham krutva tatah numagamah karaniyah. So shreyas ityatra dirghe krute numagame krute shreyan. Chandramas ityatra dirghe krute numagamah eva nasti. So chandramaha. And असंबुद्धौ इति किमर्थं विद्वस इत्यत्र हे विद्वान् इति भवति तत्र उपधा दीर्घः न भवति. Numagama will anyway happen. Ugidacham sarvanamasthane adhatoh has nothing to do with sambuddhi versus non-sambuddhi. So numagama will anyway happen, but there is no upadha dirgha. And same adhatoh iti kimartham, same thing as I mentioned, the ugit part is only restricted to the pratipadika concept, not the dhatu generated. So dhatvantanam shabdanam vishay idam sutram na pravartate. So the sankshepa, three cases as I mentioned. Atu pratyayanta shabdas, you only have the only word in our list is bhavata. So as I mentioned, it is made up of davatu. So that's the atu pratyaya. Then you have asu pratyanta ugit anga. The word in our list is shreyas. And then you have asi, that is normal asa, which does not have ugit entity in it. So asi pratyanta non-ugit anga, tatra kevalam upadha dirgha bhavati. In the first two cases, there will be upadha dirgha followed by numagama by ugidacham sarvanamasthane adhatoho in the first two cases. But here in the third case, there is no numagama, so you will have chandramaha. Chandramas is the word in the list. So almost on time, this completes the three sections of today's class. Abhyasa pustakam, adhodattanam shabdanam, au, jas, out, shas pratyanta rupanam prakriya lekhniya. Shas is also not correct, only because shas will have a bhasamnya and other functions are there. Au, jas, out, ityetesham eva prakriya lekhniya. Basically sarvanamasthana. So Rajan and Atman. And adhodattanam shabdanam supratyam vihaya sambuddhim vihaya anyaha prakriyaha lekhniyaha. So I think for all these words, you will be able to write all other prakriyas. If you get stuck, send a message. If a sutram is missed and so on, I will adjust the homework accordingly. So with this, we complete today's class. Let's do a quick recap. Three important concepts have been taught. One is sarvanamasthana pratyay pare numagamaha. That's the first two sutras. Then you have sarvanamasthana samyake asambuddhi pratyay pare upadha dirghaha. So that's the next four sutras, two main sutras, and then there are two niyama sutras. And then supratyay pare asambuddhi samyake supratyay pare upadha dirgha, that's only one sutram. Let's quickly look at the examples. It's extremely important because these sutras are very convoluted and the difficulty is going to increase once you start working out. Even if it might be complete for half of you, head might be already spinning. For half of you, if it is already clear, head will start spinning once you start doing the Abhyasa Pustakam. These are not simple sutras, take my word. So here, Ugidacham Sarvanamasthane adhatoh and Napumsakasya Jhalachaha, these are the sutras about the Numagama. Santamahata Sanyogasya Sarvanamasthane Sambuddhau are for the Upadha Dirgha, and then for Inhan Pusha Maryamanam Shau Saucha, these are the Niyamas. And then Atvasantasya Chadhatoho is for the Upadha Dirgha, Atu, and two types of Asa. Shreyas is the Ugit and Chandramas is the non-Ugit. So all this has been thoroughly discussed sequentially at one place in today's class. Please watch the video again. If you have any questions, please ask in the next class. I will not take any questions right now because every question that will come right now is going to be from immature understanding of the material. I have seen in general that students do not watch the videos 2 or 3 times. Many times I have seen that the questions that are given on the group are purely generated by misunderstanding that happens because the video is not heard twice or thrice. So I am not begging for YouTube views, but please watch the video for your own understanding for twice or thrice. Then only multiple concepts will be thoroughly clear. As I mentioned, I will not take any questions at the moment. The class is already very saturated. Every question that you will ask will be probably answered automatically when you revise the class twice or thrice. Even after listening 3 times, if you have questions, you can ask on the group, or we can discuss them in the next class. समापयामः। अष्टाध्यायी जगन्माता यस्य चित्तात् समुत्थिता वेदानाम् उपकाराय तस्मै पाणिने नमः। शब्दब्रह्म समाराध्य कृतवान्यो विलक्षणं सर्वाश्चर्यमिदं शास्त्रं तस्मै पाणिने नमः। येन धौता गिरः पुंसां विमलैः शब्दवारिभिः तमश्चाज्ञानजं भिन्नं तस्मै पाणिने नमः। धन्यवादः।